It is 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news bulletin, and we will be starting straight away with the main headlines. Tehran reasserts the right to control the shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and warns the Gulf states against siding with the U.S. 3 people are killed and 1 person is wounded when an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle in Lebanon. And Egypt offers its deep condolences to Venezuela over the victims of 2 earthquakes that hit the country. Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Badr Abdulati said that the Egyptian diplomacy under the leadership of President Fattah al-Sisi witnessed a juncture which enhanced the Egyptian status regionally and internationally. It laid firm the principle of the strategic balance adopted by the President, combining holding onto principles while maintaining an openness to the world. Abdulati made these remarks as he addressed the ceremony organized at the Foreign Ministry headquarters, marking the bicentenary of the Egyptian diplomacy. He paid tribute to the Egyptians working in the diplomatic corps who helped carry the Egyptian approach to the world and serve the nation's interests through successive generations. Iran said that a joint statement by the United States and the Gulf Cooperation Council contained interventionist, irresponsible, and provocative positions, adding that the American military presence in the Gulf was a source of insecurity and division in the region. In the statement by Iran's foreign ministry, Iran also reiterated its position that the Strait of Hormuz should be governed with Oman in line with the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the United States. The joint statement by the Gulf Council members expressed opposition to any attempt by Iran to impose tolls, fees, or reassert the control over the Strait of Hormuz. The United Nations nuclear watchdog's top officials said that the interim U.S.-Iran peace accord gives the UN nuclear inspectors access to Iran after Tehran indicated key sites would remain off-limits until the final deal with Washington was reached and the sanctions lifted. The details follow.
Allies on Thursday that any deal with Iran would take their interests into account as he wrapped up a Middle East trip aimed at winning over regional partners with deep reservations about the preliminary accord. Speaking at a meeting of Gulf Arab foreign ministers in Bahrain, Rubio said that Gulf allies shared some very serious concerns and that they wanted to be informed of every step of the peace account, which included the provisions on Hormuz. In a joint statement later on Thursday, the U.S. and the 6-member Gulf Cooperation Council said a lasting peace would mean addressing Iran's ballistic missiles, drones, and also supporting proxy groups. They also backed free, unconditional, unrestricted navigation in the Strait of Hormuz without any tolls, fees, or attempts to assert control. Meanwhile, Bahrain's Foreign Minister Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al Zayani, who chaired the gathering, welcomed Oman's announcement of a corridor for the safe passage of vessels through the strait. Oman told the meeting that future arrangements for the strait would not involve transit tolls. Rabi's 3-day tour of the Gulf was the first high-level diplomatic mission since the U.S.-Iran framework agreement last week to end the conflict, which started on February 28th with U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. At his previous stops in the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait, Rabi sought to assure officials that the proposal deal was not overly favorable to Iran, which struck several Gulf states during the war. The two countries, which ended the first round of negotiations in Switzerland on Monday, have offered conflicting accounts about financial incentives for Iran, control of the Strait of Hormuz, and the Israeli parallel war in Lebanon.
Iran reasserted the right to control shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and warned the Gulf states against siding with the U.S. a day after the attack on the ship near Oman highlighted the fragility of the preliminary deal to end the Iran war. Earlier, the Taiwanese shipping operator Evergreen Marine Corp said that one of the container ships of it was hit by an unidentified object in the Strait of Hormuz, but the crew, the vessel, and the cargo were unharmed. Evergreen Marine said that the ship was off Oman when it was struck by an unidentified object while following the UK Maritime Trade Operations recommended route. The incident came as the United States and Iran tried to forge the final agreement after signing a memorandum of understanding to end the conflict. The United States State Department said that the U.S. mediated talks between the Israeli and the Lebanese officials will go on for another day. It added that the fifth round of discussions that began this week will resume on Friday morning and that the U.S. officials continue to facilitate the negotiation. These talks come amid a ceasefire between the Israeli occupation forces and Hezbollah, an offshoot of the Middle East war that the United States and Iran are negotiating to bring to an end. Israeli forces dropped leaflets over the town in southern Lebanon, ordering the residents to leave. Lebanon's state-run national news agency earlier said that 3 people were killed and 1 person was wounded when an enemy drone targeted a vehicle on the road between Zoutar and Mayfadoun. It was the 3rd deadly incident since Tuesday, bringing the number of people killed in the Israeli attacks this week to at least 7. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem said that Israel has no option but to withdraw from the Lebanese areas it occupies unconditionally, adding that the Iran-US deal that reduced the fighting with Israel was an American-Israeli defeat. As Lebanon and Israel hold the 5th round of talks in Washington, Qassem said that the group would accept no normalization, no cancellation of the state of hostility, and no gains for Israel. The leader also thanked Iran for its support, considering the deal with Washington an official declaration of the defeat of the Americans and the Israelis. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun welcomed France and Italy's efforts to set up a multinational coalition to succeed the UN peacekeeping force in his country, whose mandate expires at the end of the year. In his statement, Aoun called the initiative a sincere expression of the international commitment to supporting Lebanon's sovereignty and stability. French President Emmanuel Macron said that France and Italy want to launch a coalition for the post-UNIFIL arrangement in coordination with the European Union and the United Nations to strengthen the Lebanese sovereignty and that of its armed forces. Russian air defenses intercepted 660 Ukrainian drones in a major nighttime attack on 12 Russian regions, as well as the Russia-held Crimean Peninsula, the Black Sea, and the Azov Sea. Russia's defense ministry said that it appeared to be one of the biggest drone attacks on the Russian regions and the illegally annexed Crimea since the Russian military operation in Ukraine more than 4 years ago. The major attack came hours after the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he had ordered a 40-day influence operation believed to mean an escalation of attacks aimed at compelling Russia to end the war after the U.S. peace efforts over the past year yielded no breakthrough. A Russian mayor said in the Tula region just south of Moscow that the private house was damaged by the attack and that a woman was wounded. South Korea will rapidly expand the drone and the counter-drone capabilities to counter North Korea, including by training 500,000 drone warriors and distributing tens of thousands of unmanned systems across the frontline units. Defense Minister An Gyubak said that the military plan to produce 110,000 drones by 2029 for deployment across the Army, the Navy, Air Force, and the Marines, but the ministry later revised this to about 60,000, with around 11,000 to be introduced in 2026. It said that these systems would be issued across services, aiming at making drones a standard item for the individual soldiers. Egypt offered its deep condolences to Venezuela over the victims of 2 earthquakes that hit the country. A foreign ministry statement expressed Egypt's solidarity with Venezuela's government and people in such a tragic incident. It extended the heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families and wished a speedy recovery for the injured. A senior American military official has arrived in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, to oversee the American relief efforts in the aftermath of the powerful twin earthquakes. 9 Portuguese and 3 Spanish nationals have been killed after 2 major earthquakes in Venezuela that killed at least 235 people. Spain's foreign ministry said that 99 Spanish citizens were unaccounted for. Portugal's foreign ministry said that 56 of its citizens were missing or otherwise unaccounted for. Health authorities across Europe were on high alert as the heat wave progressed across the continent, prompting alcohol bans in France and cracking road surfaces open in Germany. From Britain and France to Germany, Italy, Austria and Serbia, Europe sizzled under the record-breaking ball of heat rolling across the region. Scientists said that the heat wave was the worst recorded for Europe. Temperatures were probably past the peak in France and Britain, where records for June have been broken. Japan grappled with the transport disruptions while bracing for more torrential rain and risks from the 2 approaching tropical storms that spurred the authorities to issue high-level landslide warnings and order the evacuation of 1 million people. More than 200 flights were cancelled and dozens of train services suspended, while many expressways were closed. Meanwhile, Taiwan ordered the offices and the schools closed in the 3 hardest-hit regions of Kaohsiung, Pingtung and Tainan, where severe flooding shut down a section of the island's main north-south railway link. The European Union's oil coordination group said that while the flows of oil were slowly recovering following a preliminary pact to try to end the Iran war, it would nevertheless take some time for those supplies to reach Europe. The Oil Coordination Group noted the reports that trade flows are slowly beginning to recover following the Memorandum of Understanding signed between the United States and Iran last week. However, the group also noted that it will take time for supplies from the region to reach Europe. Saudi Aramco resumed the crude loadings at the Ras Tanura terminal in the Gulf after a 4-month halt, as the world's biggest oil exporter joined the rush to move the cargoes amid industry hopes of a return to normal. The Saudi oil loadings come even though the ship belonging to Taiwan's Evergreen Marine was hit by an unknown object in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Middle Eastern producers have been ramping up the oil and gas output and exports in the lead-up to the interim deal between the United States and Iran to halt the war and reopen the strait, where 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas supplies used to pass. The International Monetary Fund said that the Lebanese gross domestic product is expected to contract in 2026, given the very challenging economic, social, and humanitarian situation caused by the resumption of the war. IMF spokeswoman Julie Kuzak told the regular news briefing that the global lender was engaged closely with the Lebanese authorities to look at the economic crisis management measures to mitigate the impact of the war, but gave no details. The IMF also continued to work with the authorities on more comprehensive reforms that could be supported ultimately by the IMF program. And this brings us to the end of the news bulletin for today. Thank you for watching and goodbye.